Okay, in this tutorial, we're just going to create a function that actually takes in, in this tutorial, we're going to create a function. We're going to have two parameters defined. So this function is going to expect to receive two arguments as parameters being passed into the function. So what I want to do is, I just want to create a function called add numbers. We'll have two parameters, number 1 and number 2. Then we'll just log out the result of when you add the two numbers together. Okay, so hopefully your confidence is being built up now as we get more experience creating functions. Once we've all the building blocks, we can then start creating more interesting functions, like a function that makes a call to an API and gets real world data. So, that's kind of longer term what we're trying to build up to here. So we have our function keyword. Then we have our function name. We've seen this before. So we have add numbers is what we're going to call this function. And this function is going to expect to receive two parameters here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call them number 1, comma separate number 2. Okay? And then all I want to do is just log out to the console the results of number 1 plus number 2 and semicolon to end the statement. So number 1, this parameter here, is a reference to whatever number is passed in first. When the user calls or invokes the function, but we're just going to pass in the numbers directly. So when we pass in a number, the first number is being passed in as number 1, and that's number 1 there. And the second number we pass in will be passed in as number 2, and that's a reference to number 2 there. So then all we do is just log out the value of the numbers. Okay, so hopefully this is getting more familiar to you now. So if we want to pass two numbers into this function, we know that we first of all have to call or invoke the function. So I'm going to say add numbers, the function name, parentheses, and I'm going to pass in the number 100 and the number 150, semicolon to end the statement. So this 100 is being passed into the function as an argument, and this 150, that number, is also being passed in to the function add numbers as an argument. This function is expecting to receive two arguments, and of course then once we're in the function then they are parameters. Okay, so we're adding parameter 1, number 1, and parameter 2, number 2. So the result of this should be that we're just logging out to the console 250. So if I save, refresh, and come down to the console, or to the browser, sorry, we get 250. We can call or invoke the function again, add numbers. So maybe we're adding 500 and 404, semicolon to end the statement. That should give us 904. So if I come down to Google Chrome and refresh, we get 904. Okay, awesome. Now, the next thing I want to do is I just want to show you that the order in which data is passed in to the function actually matters. So what I want to do is I want to actually just create a template literal here. So template literal, and I'm going to say the result of the operation of adding, and then I want to have number 1. So remember, if we want to embed a variable into a template literal, we just use the $sign and the curly braces. So number 1 and number 2 is, and then all I want to do here is just add number 1 plus number 2. So I hope that makes sense. I'll just talk through what's happening. So we've used the function keyword to create a function. We've given the function a name called add numbers. Then we've defined our parentheses, opening parentheses, and closing parentheses, and we've created our two parameters here. So number 1 and number 2. So the first number passed into the add numbers function as an argument, number 1 is a reference to that, and number 2 is the reference or the parameter to the second variable that's passed in. So we're going to log out to the console the result of the operation of adding number 1 and number 2 is, and the results. So you should see in order 100 and then 150. If I save and refresh, we get the result of the result of the operation of adding 100 and 150 is 250. Okay, but if I was to change these numbers around, so pass in 150 first and then 100, while we're still going to get the same end result, what you'll notice is we're going to be seeing 150 before 100. You see that? The result of the operation of adding 150 and 100 is 250. So the key point I'm trying to make here is that the order in which you pass in arguments to the function is the order in which the function is expected to receive them. So remember, this parameter here, number 1, that will always be a reference to the first argument passed in, and this parameter here, number 2, will be a reference to the second argument passed in. And remember, when I say argument, I'm really just referring to the data that's being passed in this case, numbers. Okay, that was awesome. See you in the next tutorial.